My brother slept with my fiancée for 6 months, and my entire family covered for them, so I sold my house, moved 3,000 miles away, and rebuilt my life from the ground up, and now they want me back. Hey, Reddit. The Thursday I found them, I wasn't even supposed to be home until 8 p.m. I'm a 30-year-old male, working as a fraud investigator and AML analyst at a major bank, handling anti-money laundering cases and investigating fraudulent transactions across the tri-state area. That week, a vendor fraud case I had been building for 3 weeks resolved itself when the suspect's own accounting records appeared during discovery. So I closed the file by 2 p.m., my manager signed off on the report, and I decided to stop by that boutique on 5th Street to finally buy those ridiculously expensive candles Dominique kept talking about. The one she would slow down to look at every time we walked past. $38 for something that smelled like vanilla and burned down in about 20 hours, but she wanted them and I wanted to see her smile. The engagement ring had cost me 4 months of savings, and between the wedding venue, photographer, caterer, florist, and honeymoon deposits, I was nearly 18 grand deep into a future that felt worth every penny. For years of my life, every plan and every dream wrapped into it. When I pulled into the driveway, my brother Wesley's truck was there, which wasn't unusual because he had been staying in our guest room since January after losing his sales job at a car dealership. Something about not meeting quota. Though his version involved a jealous manager and unfair expectations, and I hadn't pressed him because he was my brother, he needed help, so I gave him a roof, meals, and no pressure on a timeline, because that's what brothers do. The house felt strangely quiet when I walked inside. Too quiet for 2 people to be home. Wesley's shoes were by the door, his jacket hanging on the hook, Dominique's purse resting on the kitchen counter where she always left it. But there was no TV, no music, no voices, and then I heard it upstairs from the master bedroom, that unmistakable rhythm, the steady beat of the headboard hitting the wall, a sound I recognized because I had heard it before from the other side of it. In moments like that, real life isn't dramatic or loud. It's your mind going calm, because losing control doesn't help you. It only makes you look unstable in whatever story comes next. I walked up the stairs deliberately, my heart pounding but my hands steady, the bedroom door slightly open, not even fully closed, because why would it be? I wasn't supposed to be home for 6 more hours, and when I pushed it open, they were there, Wesley scrambling off her so quickly he nearly fell, Dominique grabbing the sheet as if fabric could erase reality, as if covering up could undo what I had already seen, my bed, my sheets, the headboard I had spent 2 weekends assembling because the instructions were in Swedish and half the dowels didn't fit right. Brennan, she started, and I asked, how long? My voice flat and controlled, and they looked at each other with that silent communication they always seemed to have, even caught. And in that moment I understood this wasn't new, not a mistake or a lapse in judgment, but something ongoing. How long, Dominique? She was crying now, real tears, and she said, 6 months. And the words landed heavily, 6 months since January, meaning it began right after Wesley moved in, right after I offered him my home because he had nowhere else to go, right after I told him to take as long as he needed to get back on his feet. Instantly I calculated it all. 6 months of dinners I cooked for all 3 of us, 6 months of mortgage payments on a house they were turning into their private space, 6 months of wedding planning, venue tours, cake tastings, invitations we debated over, vows I rewrote repeatedly trying to make them perfect, 6 months of looking into her eyes every night believing she loved me. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I turned around and walked out, down the stairs, past the kitchen where I had made their breakfast that morning, past the living room where we had watched movies together as a family, and out to my car. I drove to the parking lot behind the public library, sat there for 2 hours with my phone on silent, thinking through every detail of my life unraveling, and then I began handling it methodically. I opened our joint banking app, 3 accounts, checking, savings, emergency fund, total balance $23,847, half of which was mine, money I had earned and saved, and I transferred exactly $11,923.50 into my personal account, the one Dominique couldn't access, not a cent more, not to steal, but to protect what was rightfully mine. Then I took screenshots and saved the transaction history going back 6 months. Every dinner I had paid for while she was sleeping with my brother, every grocery run. Where I bought food they both ate, every utility bill that kept the lights on in the house where they betrayed me. After that, I checked our shared iCloud account, the one I had set up when we first moved in together, because we had both been syncing our devices to it for years, and her notes app was right there, so I searched and found what I was looking for in under 10 minutes, a note titled W with a heart emoji, with dated entries going back to January 14th, starting with January 14th finally happened. Felt wrong, but also right. B doesn't suspect anything. Then January 28th. We need to be more careful. B almost came home early. Followed by February 12th, told W I love him. He said it back. Then March 3rd. B almost caught us today. Heart was pounding for an hour. This is so risky, but I can't stop. And finally, March 22nd. W says we should tell B eventually. Not yet. Not until after the wedding. And I screenshot everything without missing a detail. Her email was synced through the same shared account. So I opened it from the parking lot on my phone and found the messages between them. Nothing explicit, but plenty of "miss you already," and "tonight was perfect," and "we need to be more careful," and even counting the minutes until B leaves for work. The wedding invitations had gone out 2 weeks prior, 187 cream-colored envelopes with our names in gold script. Brennan and Dominique in a font she had spent 3 hours choosing. The photographer already booked with $2,800, half up front, and the caterer, the DJ, and the florist all scheduled. Her dress hanging in our closet in a garment bag that cost $300 just to preserve the fabric until the ceremony. While I had written my vows 3 times trying to get them perfect, and they were still saved in my notes app, and I had practiced them in the shower that very morning while she was probably texting my brother about when they could meet next. By the time I finished documenting everything, it was past 7, and there were 43 missed calls between Dominique, Wesley, and my mom, along with 16 voicemails and 81 text messages, none of which I answered. Instead, I drove to a Holiday Inn Express off the highway, paid cash for a week, and checked into a room that smelled like industrial cleaner, recycled air, and other people's problems, but it had a deadbolt and nobody knew where I was, and that counted for something. The family meeting happened Sunday at my mom's house, and she had called from my sister Cassidy's phone because I had already blocked everyone else, saying, "Brennan, we need to discuss this like adults. 2 o'clock. Everyone will be there." I should have said no, should have hung up and blocked that number too, but some part of me still believed blood meant something, that I would walk in and they would be handing Wesley his bags, telling him and Dominique to get out and never come back, and that my mother would put her arm around me and say she was sorry this happened and that she would always be on my side, but I was wrong. The living room was arranged like an intervention when I arrived. Mom in her armchair by the window, the one Dad bought her before he left, Cassidy on the love seat with her arms crossed, already annoyed she had to give up her Sunday, and Wesley and Dominique on the main couch sitting close enough that their shoulders touched, looking tired and looking sad and looking like the victims in their own narrative, while the only empty seat was a dining chair dragged in from the kitchen and placed directly facing them like I was on trial, so I stayed standing. "Brennan, sit down," Mom said, in that voice she used when I was 16 and came home past curfew. Gentle but firm. The voice that meant she had already decided who was wrong. "I'll stand." "Why is she here?" "Because she's part of this family. Or she was going to be. She's the reason we're having this conversation." Then Dominique started crying. Real tears. Wet and theatrical. Right on cue. Saying, "Brennan, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Wesley and I tried to fight it. We really did. But sometimes you can't help who you fall for." While I watched her work the room, the trembling lip, the tissue she somehow had ready, the way she leaned into Wesley like he was her lifeline, because she had rehearsed this, probably all weekend. "We're in love," Wesley said, his voice cracking on cue. "I know the timing is terrible and I know I messed up, but what Dom and I have is real. We didn't plan this. It just happened." "It just happened?" I repeated, thinking about 6 months in my house, in my bed, while I was at work keeping a roof over his head because he couldn't keep a job. "Brennan, don't be crude," Cassidy said from the love seat. Crude. That's what concerned her. My word choice. And Mom stood up, walked over to me, and put her hand on my arm with that gentle, disappointed expression I remembered from 100 arguments I had never won. "Honey, I know you're hurt. Anyone would be, but Wesley is your brother. Blood family forgives. And if Dominique and Wesley have real feelings for each other, real genuine feelings, maybe it's better this happened now. Before the wedding, before you two made a mistake you couldn't take back." I stared at her because this was the woman who had called me her rock, her reliable son, the one who showed up, the one who fixed things, the one who had supported her for 8 months after Dad left, letting her live in my spare room rent-free while she figured out her finances, the one who co-signed her car loan because her credit was wrecked, the one who called every Sunday without fail because that's what good sons do. You're taking their side. There aren't sides, Brennan. We're all family. You're taking their side. Wesley feels terrible. Cassidy cut in, leaning forward. They both do. This has been eating them alive. They didn't want to hurt you. They were going to tell you themselves after the wedding. After the wedding? I laughed, and the sound came out harsh and broken. So the plan was to let me marry her, go on a honeymoon with her, build a life with her, and then what? Surprise. Your wife's been sleeping with your brother the whole time. That's not. Dominique started. That's exactly what you just said. You were going to wait until after the wedding. We were confused. We didn't know what to do. You knew exactly what to do. You did it for 6 months in my bed. Every chance you got. You're being dramatic, Dominique said, and something in her voice shifted. Harder now. Testing. Because she'd realized the tearful routine wasn't working and she was trying something else. It's not like we set out to betray you. It just happened. People's feelings changed, Brennan. That's life. That's how relationships work sometimes. Your feelings changed into my brother while wearing my ring. Maybe the ring was a mistake. Maybe we moved too fast. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me instead of working all the time. There it was. My fault. Of course it was my fault. I'd driven her to it by working too much, working to pay for the wedding she wanted, working to save for the house she wanted, working to build the future she claimed to want. I looked around the room one more time, at my mother who'd chosen her cheating son over her betrayed one, at my sister who'd called my reaction to being cheated on dramatic, at my brother who'd repaid my kindness by sleeping with my fiancée in my home for half a year. Here's what's going to happen, I said, and my voice was calm now, deadly calm. The calm I used at work when reviewing evidence that was about to destroy someone's case. I'm going to walk out of here. You're all going to live with the choices you made today. And in about a week, everyone we know, every single person who got an invitation to that wedding is going to find out exactly what kind of people you are. What does that mean? Mom's voice had an edge now, the first real sign of concern. It means consequences. Something this family apparently forgot existed. Brennan, don't do anything stupid, Wesley started. I've been doing something stupid for years. Trusting you. That ends today. I walked out. Nobody followed. Nobody called after me to apologize. Nobody ran to stop me or take my side or tell me they'd made a mistake. Yeah, that told me everything. Monday morning, I started building my case like I was investigating fraud because that's exactly what this was. Credit freeze with all 3 bureaus, new checking account at a different bank, new phone number. I locked down every account, changed every password, removed Dominique from everything, and documented it all. By Tuesday, I called my real estate agent and told him to list the house this week. While he was there for photos, I had the locks changed. Wednesday, I drafted the formal eviction notice for Wesley, 30 days written notice, certified mail with signature confirmation, not emotional, not vindictive, just legal terminology about termination of verbal month-to-month tenancy arrangement and requirement to vacate premises, adding a line about sheriff escort being available during final move-out if needed. Wednesday night was wedding logistics, and the venue called and explained the situation without going into details, just the wedding is canceled. And since I was the sole name on the contract, they asked me to please confirm this in writing, and they were sympathetic but firm, no refund on the deposit, which I had expected because I just needed the paper trail. Total money lost roughly $8,400, a small price to learn who someone really was. Wednesday night, Dominique showed up, and I watched through the security camera app while sitting in my car 3 blocks away as she pounded on the door for 10 minutes, called my name, tried her old key and it didn't work, then called me 16 times in a row while standing on the porch and eventually left, but not before kicking the door hard enough to leave a scuff mark I'd have to explain to potential buyers. She had texted 17 times asking when she could come get her stuff, and I told her Saturday between 2 and 4 p.m., supervised, and she could have a friend present if she wanted. I'd have the sheriff's non-emergency line on speed dial just in case. The house went on the market Thursday, and that same Thursday brought the near mistake. I was gathering the last of my clothes when Wesley's truck pulled into the driveway, and he must have been watching for my car, Or maybe Dominique had called him. Maybe they'd been coordinating, because he caught me on the front porch, blocking the path to my car. Brennan, we need to talk. No, we don't. Just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I am family. That's why we need to work through this. That's why I'm here to apologize, to make things right. Something in the way he said it made me actually look at him. His eyes were red, his hands shaking slightly, and he couldn't meet my gaze for more than a second before looking away. He wasn't sorry, he was scared. What did Dominique tell you? I asked. What do you mean about the wedding cancellation? His face went pale, and that confirmed it. She'd called one of the vendors, probably the venue or photographer, and they'd mentioned the cancellation was already in process, and now they were scrambling to get ahead of it. Brennan, whatever you're thinking about doing, already done. I pushed past him toward my car. The emails go out Saturday at 9 a.m. 187 guests, plus the wedding party, plus both families' extended networks. You can't do that. You'll destroy us. No, you destroyed this. I'm just telling people about it. What about the deposits? The money we lost? I stopped at the car door and turned back to look at him. There's no we anymore, Wesley. There's me and there's you and Dominique. Figure out your own problems. Brennan, please. I'm begging you. I got in the car, started the engine, rolled down the window. Should have thought about consequences 6 months ago. I drove away and watched him shrink in the rearview mirror until I turned the corner. The email went out Saturday morning at 9 a.m. exactly. I'd scheduled it the night before from my hotel room, triple-checked the recipient list, and read the message one more time to make sure it was clean. Subject line: Wedding cancellation, Brennan and Dominique. The body was 4 paragraphs, factual, no emotion, no insults, no accusations beyond what I could prove. Just truth. But I wasn't done. 30 minutes later, I sent a separate email to the wedding party, bridesmaids, groomsmen, the people who'd committed time and money to stand up with us, same factual tone, with one additional line. If you need verification of these events or have questions about refunds, please contact Dominique or Wesley directly, pushing the responsibility back where it belonged. I turned off my phone and went for a drive. 3 hours through back roads I'd never taken, past farms and fields and places where nobody knew my name or my family or my story. When I turned my phone back on at sunset, there were 94 unread texts and 67 missed calls. The responses split into predictable camps: support from people who'd known me longest, neutral confusion from guests trying to figure out logistics, and damage control from my family demanding I retract everything. My mom's voicemail was particularly memorable. Brennan, what have you done? Everyone is calling me. Everyone. How could you humiliate your brother like this? I saved the voicemail, screenshot everything that came through text, and added it to my archive. The social fallout started within 48 hours. Dominique worked as a dental hygienist at a local dental practice, and the practice owners were connected to my parents through mutual friends. By Monday afternoon, the practice owner had heard enough that he called Dominique into his office. She wasn't fired because that would have been wrongful termination, but she was moved to their satellite location 45 minutes away with reduced hours, and within 3 weeks she quit. Wesley had landed a sales position at another dealership a few weeks before the email went out. Car sales is a relationship business, referrals matter, repeat customers matter, reputation matters, because when people spend $20,000 or $30,000 on a vehicle, they want to trust the person selling it to them. Word spread around the dealership about what he'd done. Then it reached customers, and the guys who had bought from Wesley before and planned to return started asking for different salespeople. The families who had referred their friends stopped referring. His pipeline dried up. His numbers dropped 60% in 6 weeks. Management put him on a performance improvement plan, and when he couldn't improve because reputation damage doesn't heal that fast, they let him go that fall. None of this was my doing, not directly, not technically. I simply told the truth one time to the people who deserved to know why they weren't attending my wedding. Everything else was just gravity. The house sold in 11 days, a cash offer $8,000 under asking from a young couple relocating from out of state, and I accepted immediately because they could close in 2 weeks and I needed to be gone. But before I left, I had unfinished business, so I filed 2 small claims actions, one against Wesley for unpaid rent. 6 months of living expenses at fair market value for the guest room, plus utilities calculated at $300 per month, $1,800 total. All well within small claims limits. The second case was against Dominique for provable shared expenses she had committed to before the affair came to light. Half the venue deposit we had paid jointly, half the photographer deposit, half the caterer advance, everything backed by clean documentation, joint bank statements, vendor contracts with both our names on them, totaling $4,200. I filed both cases the same day, paid for professional service, and had them served at their workplaces through proper legal channels. Dominique receiving hers at the dental office during lunch hour, Wesley getting his at the dealership showroom in front of customers, public humiliation legally delivered. The court dates were scheduled for 2 months out, and I didn't care if I won, even though the documentation was solid enough that I probably would. What mattered to me was the process itself, the certified letters, the awkward conversations when people asked why they were being sued, the fact that their names were now in public court records tied to the words unpaid rent and breach of agreement, consequences that would last. 9 months earlier, my boss had mentioned a position at our West Coast office, operations supervisor in Portland, better title, better money, better opportunities, and I had turned it down because Dominique didn't want to leave her family, didn't want to move across the country, didn't want to start over somewhere new, and it was almost ironic how that turned out. One Thursday morning, I called my boss and asked if that Portland position was still available, now listed as Regional Operations Coordinator, same office but with a bigger scope, and when he asked why I was interested and when they would need someone, he said honestly 2 weeks ago, they'd been short-staffed since February, and I told him I'd be there in 3 weeks. Before I left, the harassment began escalating, starting with my aunt showing up at my hotel, then my cousin, then family friends I barely remembered, all repeating the same script about how family forgives, how blood is thicker than water, how Wesley was suffering, how Dominique was suffering, and how I needed to let this go. I drafted a cease and desist letter myself, not from a lawyer because I couldn't afford one, but from a template I found online, customized it, printed it on professional letterhead I created, cited harassment statutes, listed every contact attempt with dates and times, and sent it certified mail to my mother's address with instructions to forward it to anyone who continued contacting me, adding one final line stating that further unwanted contact would result in a restraining order filing and documentation of the harassment pattern with local law enforcement. And it worked, the calls stopped. The move cost nearly everything I had left after the house sale cleared, $1,700 for the U-Haul, $800 for gas across 10 states, first and security deposit on a studio apartment I found on Craigslist, and by the time I had a bed and enough kitchen supplies to feed myself, my savings account showed $1,100, but nobody knew me there, nobody looked at me with pity, nobody whispered as I walked by, nobody asked about Dominique or Wesley or the wedding that never happened. And being anonymous was exactly what I needed. Work became my anchor, and I arrived early, stayed late, solved problems others avoided, and within 8 months I was promoted to operations manager with a 15% raise, which I accepted immediately, then asked what I needed to do to earn the next one. 13 months after I arrived, I met Meredith at a coworker's birthday party. She was a veterinary technician at an animal hospital in southeast Portland, someone who spent her days caring for scared animals and worried owners, with a quiet laugh, direct questions, and a way of looking at you that made you feel heard, not waited on. And we talked for 3 hours about nothing important, music, movies, the best hiking trails within an hour of the city, and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Her position absolutely not, and she was ready to argue about it. And when I walked her to her car, she handed me her number without me asking. Our first real date was at a Thai place in the Pearl District, where she ordered the spiciest dish on the menu and didn't flinch when it arrived, looking like it could melt through the plate. And then she asked, "What's your story? Why'd you move across the country to Portland?" I could have lied and given her the sanitized version about fresh starts, new opportunities, and career growth. All technically true but completely empty. Yet I was done pretending, so I told her everything, the discovery, the family meeting, the email, the small claims filings, the move, watching her face for judgment or pity or discomfort the way others usually reacted. But none of that appeared, and when I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. They started trying to pull me back around month 18. First through flying monkeys, old high school contacts, distant cousins, Facebook friends from college, people I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly sliding into my DMs with the same message about my sister saying I wouldn't answer her calls and asking if it was time to move on. And Wesley's been really struggling since everything happened. Then came the health card, a text from my uncle on my mom's side, from a number I hadn't thought to block, saying, "Your mom's been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. Stage 1 treatable, but she's asking for you. I know what happened was messed up, but she's your mother, Brennan. I sat with that message for 3 days, then called Meredith and talked it through, turned it over from every angle because Mom hadn't actually asked for me directly. Cassidy had been coordinating the outreach through my uncle, the same dynamic as always, the family working behind the scenes to manage me, to manipulate me, to get me back in line. I texted him back, "Tell Mom I hope her treatment goes well. I'm not coming back." His reply was brief, "She'll be devastated." I didn't answer. Mom's treatment went fine, and I know because Cassidy posted about it constantly on Facebook before I blocked her there too. Photos of Mom smiling in the hospital bed, captions about family rallying together and getting through tough times. Not a single mention of the son who wasn't there, which was fine by me. Then, 20 months after I left, Dominique found my new email address. "Brennan, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I know you probably hate me and I deserve that. Wesley and I broke up 8 months ago. It was a mistake. All of it. I threw away the best thing I ever had for someone who couldn't even commit when things got hard. I was stupid and selfish and cruel, and I hurt you in ways I can't take back. I'm not asking for another chance. I just needed you to know that I know what I lost. I hope you're happy somewhere. You deserve to be. D." I read it twice, paying attention to the careful wording, the quiet attempt at victimhood, the subtle Wesley couldn't commit deflection, the way she tried to position herself as the one who suffered, and then I blocked her email address because it was too little, too late, and I didn't need her guilt filling my inbox. Things escalated again at month 22, when a coworker mentioned that someone had been asking questions about me downtown. A woman matching Dominique's description, claiming to be an old friend trying to reconnect, asking where I worked, where I lived, whether I was seeing anyone. I notified building security at my apartment complex, upgraded my locks to a keypad system, changed my daily routines, different routes to work, different gym schedule, different grocery store, and started documenting everything in a folder on my computer in case I needed it later. 2 weeks after that, an anonymous email arrived at my work address, sent directly to me and CC'd to my entire department, including my boss and 3 levels of management, stating, "You all should know that Brennan is not who he claims to be. He's a manipulative, vindictive person who destroyed his own family and blamed everyone else for his failures. He drove his ex-fiancée to a breakdown. He abandoned his sick mother. Don't trust anything he says about his past or his character." With no signature, no specifics, no evidence, just vague character assassination meant to reshape how people saw me. Within an hour, I forwarded it to HR, attaching a summary of the situation, the ex-fiancée, the affair with my brother, the family estrangement, the ongoing harassment, along with documentation, screenshots of prior contact attempts, a timeline of events, and copies of the cease and desist letter I had already sent. HR opened an investigation, traced the email to an IP address linked to a coffee shop in the same city where Dominique now lived. They couldn't prove it conclusively because it was public Wi-Fi with no login records, but the pattern was obvious enough. I didn't hesitate, hiring a paralegal service online for $180 to prepare a professionally formatted cease and desist letter citing harassment statutes and documenting the repeated unwanted contact, then sending it certified mail to Dominique's current address, which I located in about 20 minutes through public records, and I also filed a report with local police in her jurisdiction, not to press charges since I didn't have enough evidence, but to create a paper trail and have an official record. In case things escalated, saving the incident report number in my documentation folder. The anonymous email stopped, but I added another layer of protection, updating my will, emergency contacts, and beneficiary information across every account I had, placing Meredith's name on all of it, ensuring every trace of the old life was gone. And I also added a note to my personnel file documenting the harassment pattern and authorizing HR to cooperate with law enforcement if necessary. Because I was done looking backward. 3 years to the day after I left, everything aligned. Meredith and I had been married for 6 months in a small ceremony with just friends and her family. The people who had genuinely earned the right to celebrate with us. And our daughter Lily was 3 months old, born in May with her mother's eyes and my stubborn refusal to sleep on schedule. I'd been promoted twice at the company, and now I was regional operations director, with a corner office overlooking the Willamette River, leading a team of 14 people who reported to me. The salary wasn't make-you-rich money, but it was steady and strong enough that we could buy a house in a quiet neighborhood and stop stressing over every purchase. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place because Dominique couldn't leave things alone. After leaving the practice, She had taken a new job as a dental hygienist at a small office in her hometown, back where she'd started, trying for a clean slate, a respectable position, a fresh start. What she didn't know was that the new practice owner had ties to the state dental board, and one of the board's ethics committee members happened to be Meredith's uncle. Not something I planned or engineered, just the way small professional worlds overlap sometimes. Over Thanksgiving dinner at Meredith's parents' house, her uncle mentioned they had investigated a hygienist who was caught running unauthorized searches through the State Health Information Exchange, and the searches were all tied to one individual, some man who used to live in the state and had moved to Oregon, and she claimed she was only curious about an old acquaintance, but HIPAA doesn't care about curiosity. I nearly dropped my fork and asked, what was her name? He told me it was Dominique, and that she had used her credentials to look up information about me through the Health Information Exchange, including my current address, my employer, my insurance details, everything automatically logged because healthcare privacy laws require audit trails. The practice owner discovered the pattern during a routine audit, no clinical justification, no treatment relationship, just unauthorized access to protected health information. I asked what the consequences were, and he said license suspension pending full investigation, and if the board determined she intentionally violated patient privacy for personal reasons, which the pattern made fairly clear, she could face permanent revocation along with potential civil liability if the patient pursued it. I wasn't going to pursue anything. I didn't need to, because the board had already opened its investigation and the audit trail spoke for itself, her own actions creating the evidence. 2 years earlier, I had already filed a police report, documented the harassment pattern, sent a formal cease and desist, and built a paper trail proving this wasn't isolated curiosity but part of an ongoing pattern of unwanted contact. So when the board investigator requested background information, all that documentation was organized chronologically in a folder, ready to forward: professional misconduct, privacy violation, harassment pattern, documented and dated, and she had essentially destroyed her own case. I just kept the records. 3 weeks later my phone rang from an unknown number, and I answered without checking, and I heard, "Brennan, it's your mother. Please, we need to talk." I asked how she got my number, and she said my cousin gave it to her without knowing, and she begged me to listen, and I almost hung up, but something in her voice made me pause because she sounded older, tired, not like the woman who had told me to forgive my brother 3 years earlier. I asked what she wanted, and she said Wesley was falling apart, losing another job, unable to keep a relationship, and Dominique was blaming him for everything that happened with her career, and that they were both spiraling, and she knew she didn't know any of us anything but that he was still my brother and still needed family. I told her he had family, he had me, and he chose to sleep with my fiancée for 6 months while I paid his rent. She said, we were wrong, all of us, about how we handled that meeting, the things we said, and reminded me that she had told me I was being dramatic and told me to forgive him, and I said, you chose him? And she replied quietly, I was wrong. And I said, yeah, you were. And then there was silence. 3 years of nothing suddenly interrupted. Finally I said I wasn't coming back, that I wouldn't help Wesley or rescue Dominique from the consequences she created, because I had a family now, a wife who chose me every single day, a daughter who needed me, people who actually wanted me there. She said she understood and then added, I miss you, Brennan, every day. And I said I knew because I did know, but knowing didn't change anything, because missing me doesn't undo what happened, and I told her to take care of herself. Then I hung up. Meredith walked in holding Lily on her hip and asked who it was, and I told her it was my mother, and she asked if I was okay, and I looked at my wife, at my daughter reaching for me with tiny fingers and a gummy smile, at the house we built together and the life we earned, and I said, yeah, and I meant it, I'm okay. The final confrontation came 4 months later during a work conference back east that I couldn't avoid because my presence was required for a leadership summit, and I made the mistake of stopping at a coffee shop I used to frequent out of habit, and that's where I saw Wesley, looking rough, about 30 pounds heavier, none of it healthy, with eyes that had the flat, hollowed-out look of someone who no longer expected things to improve, 3 years of consequences written across his face. And he saw me before I could leave and crossed the shop in for strides, saying, Brennan? And then, you look good. And I replied, thanks, while he shifted his weight with the same nervous energy he had the day on my porch, telling me he'd been trying to reach me for years and that he knew what I wanted to say because he had read the letters, and then he said he was sorry, that he had said it before but meant it this time. What I did was the worst thing I've ever done in my life, and I've had to live with it every single day since. I looked at him and said, "Good." He blinked, and I repeated it, "Good. You should have to live with it. That's how consequences work. You make a choice, you live with the results." He tried again, saying, "We're still family." And I answered calmly, without anger, without heat, just stating a fact. "No, we're not. You stopped being my brother the day I found you in my bed with my fiancée. The family meeting confirmed it. You all made your choice. This is you living with it." He insisted, "I've changed. I've been working on myself." I replied, "Great. Go be better somewhere else. I don't need you in my life. I don't want you there. And honestly, I don't think about you anymore." His face crumpled in that way people look when they finally understand you aren't bluffing, when it sinks in that it's truly over. He asked, "What about Mom? She's getting older." I said, "She has you. She picked you. Remember." Then I finished my coffee, placed the empty cup on a nearby table, and told him, "Have a good life, Wesley. I mean that. Just have it away from me." I walked out and didn't look back. The spring sun felt warm on my face as I stepped outside, and my flight home left in 4 hours. Meredith and Lily would be waiting at the airport when I landed. I got into my rental car and started driving toward the airport, knowing there were 2,647 miles between me and home, and that I would be there by tonight. Guys, we are so close to hit 1,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 1,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.